York City area. And it was just amazing that he was still standing at 75. And there we are. My wife bought us front row seats, MetLife.
Oh, at MetLife.
Yeah. It was fantastic. It's been very hot, close to 100 here, but that night, front row helps a lot. There's a little room in front of you.
I'm sure they were not cheap, but that was very nice of her to do that.
I would never have spent that amount of money in my life, but it was worth it because it was a big birthday.
Listen, you only have one life. This is not a dress rehearsal.
And it was MetLife.
It was MetLife. And
who was your cameraman on that last
That would be me. That was a selfie.
Oh, that was
really
wow.
cute.
Yeah, very accurate.
What did you think of his? I saw him on this tour as well. When he has the screen up behind him with Dua Lipa,
that's great,
singing and having the video.
Oh, we were singing along to every song. I think I scared Peter that I knew all the words to all of the songs, and it was a salute to Elton, still standing at 75.
So talented.
The only other time I've ever seen Elton John, you and I went to a party at the Super Bowl. And we saw him in a small room.
Kraft hired him. I think he actually did it for free, didn't he? Because they're really good friends. And
Maybe.
He had this concert.
But that was just, we just saw Elton with the piano in that hall.
Yeah, that's true.
But this was the whole band, and it was great. So everybody who saw him, I got a lot of text messages over the weekend. It was a great show.
Bruce Springsteen's in the news, too, for charging so much for tickets now. He's a New Jersey guy.
Or is it Ticketmaster that's
No,
gouging?
they're saying he is.
His
tickets are now comparable to what you would pay on a Ticketmaster or one of those sites. Thousands of dollars.
I was hearing from our friend Dawn, who was trying to buy tickets. Not your Dawn. And apparently there is surge pricing. And so she didn't think she could get them in New York. So she said, you know what? I'll fly to Florida. I'll fly to Georgia. She got him in Georgia. I don't know what she's going to do.
I think he just blew the surprise. I think it was your Dawn trying to buy you front row tickets.
Not to Bruce Springsteen. His political views have kind of turned a lot of people off. But we'll see. The last time we heard about Bruce Springsteen didn't he get arrested for
a while back.
In a park? Yeah.
Drunk driving or something?
On a motorcycle.
I don't know what it was.
Drunk cycling or something. Meanwhile, middle of the day. 4 minutes now after the top of the hour. It's going to be a big economic week for the president and for this country because this week's going to be a number of numbers coming out that might not look so promising for the president as he gets set to hopefully hold on to one of the chambers of Congress in the midterm elections. Number one, it's going to be Tuesday. It's going to be consumer confidence. How confident do you feel? Wednesday, the Federal Reserve meeting. Are the rates going to go up 0.75 or a full basis point? The GDP will be out. Will this be its second consecutive negative month? And does that mean we're in a recession? Not according to some of his experts. And on Friday, the personal consumption index, which could be good because one thing about America, we are still buying stuff.
Well, here's the thing. It's low unemployment and strong job creation.
That's good.
But limited supplies of all of our goods.
That's bad.
We have high gas prices, high prices across the board, dismal consumer and business confidence. And yes, that first quarter, the GDP was down 1.6%. They're expecting it could be 1 to 2% down the second. And if you look at the definition of a recession, it's 2 quarters back to back with bad numbers.
Right, exactly. And that is how they have defined it forever, but
not anymore.
There's some pre-spinning going on.
They're changing the definition now.
Because there is this blizzard of bad numbers. Particularly, just don't believe your own lying eyes. When you see prices like that, does that seem like things are going right? No. So instead, the administration is adopting, you know what? Usually you don't know you're in a recession until way after the recession. And so that's kind of what they're going for, is usually it's not announced in live time. Although I'm old enough to remember when you had 2 back-to-back consecutive quarters of negative growth. That was a recession. On Thursday, we're going to get a number. We're probably going to be in a recession, down a point or so in gross domestic product. However, the Treasury Secretary, whose job it is to make us all feel like it's not that bad, tried over the weekend. Watch.
Many economists expect second quarter GDP to be negative. First quarter GDP was negative. So we could see that happen, and that will be closely watched. But I do want to emphasize what a recession really means is a broad-based contraction in the economy. And even if that number is negative, we are not in a recession now. We've got a very strong labor market. When you're creating almost 400,000 jobs a month, that is not a recession.
So interesting, though, because she's Fed chairman. It's usually she's a numbers person and yes or no. And then you let others spin out what it actually means, how bad the recession is.
Wrong.
She did get it wrong, and it is flying in the face of what we always knew as recession. The Wall Street Journal writes today, their indications are that inflation has peaked, that core inflation could come down from 6.5 to 5.9. How that's indicated is they strip out food and energy out of it. So there are some positive signs. There are also some signs, too, that we are in a recession. A guy like Larry Summers comes out and says he does believe we're going to be heading to a recession. So they have to get their own party straight. But for the most part, I'm not that worried about how what they term it. It's how it feels. Are people still going to be hiring? Are interest rates still going to get up? Is that first-time home buyer going to have a shot? Are your wages going to be keeping up with what you're earning? So I think there's a few things where the American people will decide overall if we're in a recession.
We've seen gas prices go down a little bit recently.
40 cents.
And you always say it's because of supply and demand.
Absolutely.
Now more people are seeing prices are dropping, so now more people might be driving, which means prices might go up again.
Absolutely.
And Senator Marsha Blackburn says she thinks it's bad right now. She thinks it's going to get worse. Listen.
People are smart, and they know that prices are high. They're paying more for the goods and services that they generally buy, and they're not believing what Janet Yellen is saying because she thinks, well, you look at economic indicators and credit, and you look at industrial output. So those things are good, so don't believe anything about high inflation and a recession.
So they are trying to pre-spin. They're trying to make you feel like that close to $6 you're paying for gas is not a bad thing with these radioactive numbers. Jim Garrity at the National Review, he's got a great column over the weekend, and he talks about the problem for Joe is how this administration has blamed Vladimir Putin for everything, particularly all of these bad numbers. You're going to hear Putin a lot over the next week or so. And he writes, if everything from your household budget to international trade to the planet's climate are now in a weaker, more endangered shape as a result of Putin, Americans may start to wonder, why didn't Joe Biden do more to stop Putin? Remember, we got here because Joe Biden said at one point during that awkward interview, a limited incursion of Ukraine, and that would be okay, which kind of gave him the green light to do it. And since then, he has had to blame Putin or Trump or COVID for everything.
Washington Post is saying, quit, Joe, quit.
Yep.
Biden could save the midterms with a one-term pledge. They say just announce it. Don't listen to the party. Just announce it now. Problem is, if he announces it, he'll be a lame duck president, and he has 2 more years.
Right. They say you get out of the way and be just somebody just working for the betterment of the country and let everybody else do it out. The one thing is pretty clear that Joe Biden is less popular than the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is more popular than Joe Biden right now, and that's one thing Republicans should be wary of. That, you know, just because Joe Biden's approval is at 31% doesn't mean the Democrats' approval is like that.
Well, the quiet campaign to get Joe Biden not to run is getting a little louder.
Yep.
We're going to talk about that coming up on this Monday telecast.
10 minutes after the top of the hour and straight. So let's check in with our senior meteorologist, Janice Dean, for our Fox weather forecast. Janice, hard to see those images in a national park.
Yeah, unfortunately, California is prone to wildfires, right? We know that. We don't have a lot of relief in the forecast, and the cause is unknown, 0% containment. That's not good news for the next few days. And we're talking about the central portion of California, right around here, not getting in on that good moisture from the monsoon season that typically brings, the rain that they need across the Southwest, where we have extreme drought conditions. We're just not getting that rain in the forecast. So there's where we've got a pair of fires in Central California, and look at where we get the heavier rain for parts of the wildfires in the Southwest. The temperatures very warm. We don't have the gusty winds that we sometimes see in California, but the relative humidity is going to remain low, and the temperatures are going to be well over 90 degrees in some of these areas. The Southwest, cooler temperatures because of the monsoon season, but again, the area that we are focusing in on around the Yosemite area, temperatures, getting close to 100 degrees and no rain in the forecast. We'll continue to monitor that, of course. And the heat is the other big story. FoxWeather.com for your latest details. All right, over to you, Steve, Ainsley, Brian.
That's right. And Janice, just a quick question for you. It seems like last week at Yosemite, the giant redwoods dodged a bullet. They're still in peril, aren't they?
Of course, because we don't have any containment of this wildfire, and the weather conditions are not going to be very good for the firefighters going ahead.
All right. Thanks, Janice. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
18 minutes now after the hour. The other big story is, and it's every day. It's maddening to keep and tedious to keep reporting this, but it's it matters so much for our national security. The border is broken. Everyone knows it's smashed. Everyone knows the wall is rusting in the middle of the desert. Everyone knows that only 30% of our Border Patrol is actually working the border. The rest are processing people. Everyone knows 4 million roughly have come in under the Biden administration, not counting the 800,000 getaways. But when the Aspen Institute hosted HHS Secretary Mayorkas, he had no problem saying this. But notice he looks on the ground when he's saying the words.
The border is secure. The border, we are working to make the border more secure. That has been a historic challenge.
And that just flies in the face of what we know for a fact, because the United States has shattered the record for most known stops on the border. We're about 1.7 million so far. That's the most recorded since 1960. And here's the thing, there are 3 more months left in the fiscal year. So that number is going to go up much higher.
Especially when it gets not as hot, when it stops being this hot. It's supposed to be slow right now.
Right, yeah. Exactly right. But here's the thing. Tony Gonzalez is a congressman from the great state of Texas, and he apparently represents what is described as 42% of our southern border. And he says it's not secure. And he is hosting a delegation of 9 members of Congress, all Republicans, are going to head down to the southern border today to take a look. He spoke to Trey Gowdy last night about what Secretary Mayorkas told him in his office a couple of weeks ago and what he said the other day. Watch this.
It's the furthest thing from secure. I represent 42% of the southern border. There's certainly nobody in my district that thinks it's secure. Today in San Antonio is 102 degrees. About a month ago it was the same temperature, and we found 53 migrants cooked to death in the back of a trailer. Nothing has changed. About 3 weeks ago, Secretary Mayorkas came to my office in D.C., and we sat and we spoke about a few things. I asked him for one thing in particular to help with this crisis. That's repatriation flights out of Del Rio, Texas. Those are essentially flights where folks that do not qualify for asylum, which are about 95% of the migrants coming over, they get put on a plane, and instead of getting sent to another ICE detention in the United States, they get sent back to their country of origin. It's the only way this goes away.
Or they get sent to cities across the country.
Yeah.
Most of them come in through Arizona or through Texas, and the governors there are saying we can't handle all this. So the governor of Texas is putting them on these buses and shipping them to various places throughout the United States voluntarily. They can get on these buses and go to cities where their loved ones are living. Many of them are going to D.C., many of them are going to New York, and you've got the leaders, the Democratic leaders that are complaining. But you have Representative Tony Gonzalez, who you just heard from. He's the Republican, and he says Democrats have no one to blame but themselves. They're in control of the House, they're in control of the Senate, they're in control of the presidency, and they're the ones who did this. They created this problem. He said that Hispanic Americans are coming over to the Republican Party in droves, and this is an opportunity to change the scope of politics and the party, and he really wants to work with the Democrats. There are a few that he's working with. There's one in particular from Florida that came over to see the border. Listen to this.
As you know, in Congress, it's very divided right now. But if you roll up your sleeves and if you find partners, you can find people that want to go to work. I was excited 2 days ago. I hosted Darren Soto. He's a Democrat from Florida. He came to my district. We went to Del Rio. We saw the border. We met with ranchers. We talked about immigration reform. We stopped by Uvalde, met with mental health facility, and spoke with different folks. This is the type of, it's a one-off. You'll never see Nancy Pelosi here. You'll never see AOC and some of these others, but I think that's what it takes.
I wonder if Darren Soto, the Democrat who went down there, will go back to Nancy Pelosi, will go back to AOC and some of the Democrats and say, y'all really need to go down there. Or Ms. Vice President, who is the border czar, you should go and check it out.
Well, I'll tell you one thing is pretty clear. One thing, Ainsley, I think that was erroneous. I don't think that Arizona or Texas is sending anybody to New York. That is our
just
mayor.
Just to D.C.
Yeah, our mayor is just trying to deflect the blame, trying to fool everybody. They're not sending anybody. They said, hey,
Federal
Washington,
government.
yeah. And I know DeSantis said, if you keep this up, I'm sending them to Delaware. They seem to have stopped in Jacksonville. Here's more hope. Bipartisan move for the so-called Common Sense Caucus in New York City. I didn't know we had one. They consist 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats. One of the Democrats' name is Robert Holden, and Joe Borelli's here all the time. They have sent a letter to Mayorkas saying, stop with these midnight flights, dropping off illegals in our state. We can't afford them. You're overburdening our social service system, including shelters. Knock it off. That's what you need. Democratic leaders to do what's best for the people that put them in office, not with their party.
Well, and here's the thing. If the Democrats change their opinion and their approach toward the border, that would admit that there's a problem. And as we've heard from the guy at the top, the border is secure. And, Brian, to your point about a common sense caucus, here we are.
Right.
In New York. You said there's no common sense caucus in New York? Common sense caucus on a couch right here.
Absolutely. Would you include Ashley in that?
Absolutely.
She's not on the couch.
Oh, that's true. So, but you have common
Come on,
sense.
Ashley, come sit on the couch.
She's
I'm at
pretty
the rail
smart.
stand today, guys. Very good Monday morning to you. We are going to start with this. 2 people are dead and at least 5 others are hurt after a shooting in the San Pedro neighborhood of Los Angeles. The shooting happened during a car show. An LA County councilman says police have arrested a suspect, but the LAPD has not confirmed this. Witnesses say children were also at the park during that shooting. Police say there could have been multiple shooters. And former Vice President Al Gore taking heat for comparing climate change skeptics to the police response to the Uvalde school shooting. Listen to this.
Climate deniers are really in some ways similar to all of those almost 400 law enforcement officers in Uvalde, Texas, who were waiting outside an unlocked door while the children were being massacred.
Unbelievable. One commentator saying, quote, absolutely disgusting rhetoric. Comparing the climate to the little kids being massacred is absolutely appalling. And a lot of unexpected twists and turns in a wild NASCAR Cup Series race at Pocono Raceway.
Here comes the 11.
They lean on each other a little bit. Chastain
Hard into the wall. He goes around. He'll hit the inside wall as well. Caution has come out.
So if you thought that was crazy, Ross Chastain wrecking his car in a late battle with Denny Hamlin for the lead, but Hamlin would go on to win with Kyle Busch coming in second. But both were disqualified after the race when inspections of their cars showed rules violations. As a result, Chase Elliott was awarded the Cup Series win. And get this, John Rich beating out pop stars like Lizzo and taking aim and a jab at woke culture.
That's right. Will he perform that song or something else?
Yes,
He will,
That
acoustically.
song, number 1.
Thank
Right.
you, Ashley.
Thanks, Ashley.
John Rich has had a great year. You know, he's now had 2 number 1s, Progress, and he had Santa Has a Dirty Job with Mike Rowe. Unrelated. The 2 are unrelated, I think.
Meanwhile, unrelated to John Rich, someone he probably is sending a message to through that song, is one of the most controversial faces in Hollywood. And now, Fox Nation taking a deeper look at the scandals and career of Alec Baldwin.
Trouble and Alec Baldwin are never too far apart. In 2014, he is bicycling the wrong way down Fifth Avenue in New York City, and cops pull him aside and say, hey, you're going the wrong way.
And that snowballed into this F-bomb filled rant at female police officers.
And then he blames them again, that they were trying to get resources for New York City. We're not that poor. Alec Baldwin is simply the blame king.
So I'll look at Alec Baldwin's career. I host this on Fox Nation. It is now available today. If you tried to click yesterday, it wouldn't have worked. Today is when it drops.
Fantastic.
Does he know you're doing this?
He does not know.
Stood outside of your house?
From the neighborhood.
Yes, from Massapequa. I was the right person to do it. Absolutely.
Well, you were, because his father was your coach.
Well, what happened is his father was social studies teacher at Mashpee High School, was my wife's teacher.
Alec Baldwin's dad?
Yeah,
Okay.
he was a football coach too, great guy. And he did summer recreation. So every summer we did summer recreation at our grammar school. So for 5 summers, he ran it for 3 months.
Yeah.
And he was the greatest guy. Alec's the only one I didn't know. You know, Billy, Danny, and Steven. And I was saying once in a while, you have an older brother? And then one day, Dawn tells me the story that in social studies, he wheels in a television. He said, my son is an actor, and he's on The Doctors.
Oh, cool.
And he's like,
That
look
is
at
so
him.
cool.
And he's
So do you interview yourself maybe in silhouette to talk about what the father was like when you were...
Right.
When he was
do,
your
Steve,
coach?
like you doing the selfie at Elton John.
Yeah.
I hold up the camera and I interview
Right.
myself with very bad lighting.
If you did a selfie interview in the 70s,
selfie
I want to see that.
But it wouldn't be Brian, it would be Dawn.
It was the 70s.
Right, it was
Dawn,
the 70s.
right?
Yes, it would be Dawn, who I could not get her rights. I could not get Dawn's rights. Just me.
Dawn does not like to be on television.
Maybe if I did her in silhouette. Maybe you do
How's
that.
her store going? She opened a clothing store.
Yeah, Wild Willow's going extremely well. She had someone drop in from Texas yesterday.
Nice.
They got coming back from the Hamptons, just to say, because we talked about it on the show.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So check it out. It's called
Wild Willows on Broadway in Massapequa.
Fantastic.
Okay, I can go
It
make
sounds
it
like a
into
Broadway
that.
play. Wild Willows on Broadway.
Investigation into the president's son picks up steam. Legal experts point out his failure to register as a foreign agent. That was one thing. Law professor Jonathan Turley quoting this, the recent disclosures of additional foreign contacts has only strengthened what was already a strong case. Indeed, in the last few weeks, the compelling basis for a Foreign Agents Registry Act charge has become unassailable and undeniable. You would think. Fox News contributor Miranda Devine is the author of Laptop from Hell. She joins us now to react. She was at the forefront of this beat. Miranda, I think everyone agrees something's coming. What makes you think that FARA violation is in some of these charges?
Well, 2 reasons. One is because there are at least 24 potential FARA violations that are evident from the laptop, from the influence peddling that both Hunter Biden and his uncle Jim Biden were doing when they were using Joe Biden's name when he was vice president to extract millions of dollars from various, oligarchs and Chinese state-owned enterprises. And then there is the fact that we know that from leaks from certainly previously from this grand jury in Delaware that's been operating since 2018, that they were looking at FARA violations. The only flip side of that is that FARA violations really have been not very well used at all, even though the law's been in place since 1938 to prevent Americans lobbying on behalf of foreign governments. But it's really, in recent times, only been applied against Republicans and particularly Trump world people. So, and we note that although people in Trump world, Republicans, have had search warrants executed on their homes, that has not happened to Hunter Biden.
Right. I mean, because he basically turned it over to a laptop repair person and made it, you don't have to come to his house for anything. He left it everywhere, including Keith Ablow's office. So a couple of things. You're looking at a Yugoslav leader wanting to get financing to rebuild his palace. Colombia, the deal, the good friends of the family. You got China, obviously, the company that's there. You got Russia oligarchs who he's dealing with. This is almost comical how guilty he is. He's walking around without a care in the world. The Thursday in Malibu. What do you think the reason is that we haven't heard anything after 4 years? A 4-year investigation.
Look, that might be a good thing, Brian. It could show that the US attorney in Delaware runs a very tight ship, unlike a lot of the other investigations we've seen into Republicans. And, you know, maybe they're just trying to avoid political interference. That would be the Pollyanna view. The other view, the more cynical view, would be that they are slow walking this until after the midterms. There is so much evidence on the laptop of both tax evasion as well as FARA violations. And, you know, it's obvious that Hunter Biden lied on his gun background check, and there is some suggestion that the grand jury is looking into that.
Yeah.
But I guess we can only wait, but it has to be politically sensitive at the moment with the midterms coming.
Right, and the tie to his dad, which is logical, it doesn't look as though, especially if you watch other channels, they're even looking there. The big guy might have ducked this one again. We'll see. Miranda, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.
If you want to know what's going on, you just read her column every day. Congressman Lee Zeldin now getting extra security from the NYPD on the campaign trail after getting attacked at a investigation into the president's son picks up steam. Legal experts point out his failure to register as a foreign agent. That was one thing. Law professor Jonathan Turley quoting this, the recent disclosures of additional foreign contacts has only strengthened what was already a strong case. Indeed, in the last few weeks, the compelling basis for a Foreign Agents Registry Act charge has become unassailable and undeniable. You would think. Fox News contributor Miranda Devine is the author of Laptop from Hell. She joins us now to react. She was at the forefront of this beat. Miranda, I think everyone agrees something's coming. What makes you think that FARA violation is in some of these charges?
Well, two reasons. One is because there are at least 24 potential FARA violations that are evident from the laptop, from the influence peddling that both Hunter Biden and his uncle Jim Biden were doing when they were using Joe Biden's name when he was vice president to extract millions of dollars from various, oligarchs and Chinese state-owned enterprises. Then there is the fact that we know that from leaks from certainly previously from this grand jury in Delaware that's been operating since 2018, that they were looking at FARA violations. The only flip side of that is that FARA violations really have been not very well used at all, even though the law's been in place since 1938 to prevent Americans lobbying on behalf of foreign governments. But it's really, in recent times, only been applied against Republicans and particularly Trump world people. So, and we note that although people in Trump world, Republicans, have had search warrants executed on their homes, that has not happened to Hunter Biden.
Right. I mean, because he basically turned it over to a laptop repair person and made it, you don't have to come to his house for anything. He left it everywhere, including Keith Ablow's office. So a couple of things. You're looking at a Yugoslav leader wanting to get financing to rebuild his palace. Colombia, the deal, the good friends of the family. You got China, obviously, the company that's there. You got Russia oligarchs who he's dealing with. This is almost comical how guilty he is. He's walking around without a care in the world. The Thursday in Malibu. What do you think the reason is that we haven't heard anything after 4 years? A 4-year investigation.
Look, that might be a good thing, Brian. It could show that the US Attorney in Delaware runs a very tight ship, unlike a lot of the other investigations we've seen into Republicans. And, maybe they're just trying to avoid political interference. That would be the Pollyanna view. The other view, the more cynical view, would be that they are slow-walking this until after the midterms. There is so much evidence on the laptop of both tax evasion as well as FARA violations. And, it's obvious that Hunter Biden lied on his gun background check, and there is some suggestion that the grand jury is looking into that.
Yeah.
But I guess we can only wait, but it has to be politically sensitive at the moment with the midterms coming.
Right, and the tie to his dad, which is logical, it doesn't look as though, especially if you watch other channels, they're even looking there. The big guy might have ducked this one again. We'll see. Miranda, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.
If you want to know what's going on, you just read her column every day. Congressman Lee Zeldin now getting extra security from the NYPD on the campaign trail after getting attacked at a